Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Meeting of the Minds webinar on what urban transformation really looks like for one older industrial legacy city. Today we're going to be talking about Cleveland, Ohio with Lev Gonix from Digital C. My name is Jessie Feller-Hahn. I'm the Executive Director of Meeting of the Minds. We are a global thought leadership network and platform with year-round digital and in-person programming. We connect global urban sustainability, innovation, and technology leaders across sectors to share best practices, tools, and solutions. We do that through our blog, our monthly webinar series, our pop-up events, workshops, meetups, and our annual summit every fall. Our 11th annual fall summit will be in Cleveland this year, which is why we're talking about Cleveland today. It convenes from October 23 to 25, and we'll be continuing the conversation there from today's webinar. Registration is already open at meetingoftheminds.org, our website. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Lev as our presenter today. He's the CEO of Digital C based in Cleveland. He's an educator, technologist, and smart city architect and has been teaching, working, and living on the net for more than 25 years. He's also the co-founder and CEO of One Community, the award-winning nonprofit organization enabling and celebrating innovation, collaboration, and productivity through next-generation broadband networks, big open data solutions, and IoT for public benefit. He was also the CIO at Case Western Reserve from 2001 to 2013, and he is going to share a little bit more exactly about what Digital C does today, as well as what's happening in Cleveland, where we'll be convening in October. So with that, Lev, take it away.
Thank you, Jessie, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Again, my name is Lev Gonix. I'm the CEO of Digital C, a Cleveland-based civic technology nonprofit that focuses on catalyzing technology for community impact. It's a pleasure for me to share some of the story of our city in the context of a subset of cities across the land. Again, cities that, like Cleveland, have an amazing legacy during the industrial era and are on a journey to actually cross into the digital age. Without any further ado, I want to simply go into my presentation and welcome your comments as Jessie has outlined along the way. So again, here is the Chamber of Commerce story that Cleveland is indeed in the midst of a renaissance with new business talent and a transformed downtown, and yet Cleveland does remain a legacy city working to transition from its manufacturing heritage to an economy driven by digital technologies. A couple of simple indicators for those of you who haven't had a chance to come visit the town in the last decade is really that the downtown is back in a big way, booming. We've actually had a nearly 80% increase since the year 2000, and within the next 24 months, we'll actually have 20,000 people, mostly young, living in the downtown. In a related way, actually, exciting to see the kind of talent that is moving into the city as startups and other organizations across the region become attractive to young folks. Actually, just about 31% of folks living in the city of Cleveland now have at least a 4-year degree. And actually, just for a relative statement, probably worth noting that Cleveland area ranks 8th in the United States, tied with folks in Miami and Seattle in the growth of college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds. And then there's the story of all the important shiny buildings that are undergirding the, again, economic renaissance that is underway. There's about $17 billion in capital development, almost $3 billion of which is actually related to tourism, hotels, convention centers, and the like, and another $2.3 billion invested in Northeast Ohio companies by angel investors and venture capitalists. Even though we don't have too many entrepreneurs on today's webinar, I think that's certainly worth sharing. And all of that has really led to an important sense of collective pride, a sense of place. It's not only the Cavaliers and our other sports teams. There is a palpable sense that the festivals, the fairs, the museums, and all of the neighborhood energy that is going on is really creating an important new energy in our region. And still, we are very much on a journey. The digital economy, in my view, is not a destination. It is a journey, and we are very much in this transition from a manufacturing hub to an economy driven by digital technology. A lot of people, when I talk around the country and beyond, ask, what is a legacy city? So I want to kind of give you a snapshot, really viewed from like a 50-year perspective. And you can see that population growth is one of the attributes, or in the case of legacy cities, as the industrial economy declined, so too did the population, as compared to other U.S. cities over this 50-year view. Another important attribute and element of the very same story is that poverty becomes much more concentrated in our legacy industry cities, associated with displacement, dislocation, and obviously the need to reinvent the underlying economic base of our community. And likewise, you can sort of see the challenge associated with not only household income, but related to it is actually the tax base for our cities and the like. Another way to take a look at it is, in fact, the vacant property issue. Of course, this is just kind of a view of, again, for those of you who can see it there, the national average for vacant properties is at 11% or so. And you can see that in the far right-hand corner of the slide, there is a set of cities, a subset of our legacy cities that actually obviously have had very difficult times, and Cleveland is right in that subset, where while not as challenged as Detroit, we certainly have our set of issues. But I did want to very much include the core insight, which is that if you add up all of these so-called legacy cities, you put them all together, we actually have the 5th largest economy in the world. And I think that that's important to understand, that legacy cities are not dead cities. Legacy cities are undergirded by an industrial economy that has not disappeared. It is simply in the journey of a transformation that's underway. And again, just to kind of give you a visual of that environment, certainly that's what it looks like. So let me now shift to essentially how we have approached what I'm calling the intentional innovation agenda for a legacy city. And today, for time, I'm really going to kind of go through really just 3 arcs of activity that inform our intentional innovation work. One I'm going to go deep on because, as I know many of you on this webinar are the doers. I'm going to go deep into one of them, and then I'm going to go broad into 2 others and invite you during Q&A to ask questions. I'm really going to talk about how important it is in a legacy city like Cleveland that historically has taken advantage of its geolocation, water, lakes, rivers, roads, ports, airports, to really talk about the infrastructure of the 21st century. And while there is a Chamber of Commerce story around broadband infrastructure, there's another important part of this story, and our organization, Digital C, is really trying to affect some of that activity. And then take a look really at one of the enormous assets of the region, which is our fresh water asset here in Lake Erie, and really talk about an innovation agenda that is emerging in the last 5 years around it, some very exciting developments, which I trust will be of interest to folks in the webinar. And then finally take a look at what Cleveland perhaps is best known for in terms of its innovation agenda, but I'm going to turn it a little bit on its head when I talk briefly about healthcare. So again, we're going to talk about broadband, we're going to be talking about innovation on the lake, and then a different kind of healthcare partnership, which I think is authentic and intentional in its design. So I really want to talk, first of all, about the challenge of broadband infrastructure, the 21st century currency, and really outline that while for a lot of us on the webinar, and in fact, in terms of our mindset, we very much assume that, in fact, everyone has broadband, and it is essentially a form of broadly available, ubiquitously deployed infrastructure for the 21st century that drives our economies. I wanted to really provide, again, because I know a number of you on the webinar here, you are data-centered folks, and I share this with you. This is the most recent data from the American Community Survey that is conducted, and you can really see that in Cleveland and Detroit, looking at the bottom here, that when you sort of add it all up, we have significant portions. Really, when you take a look at all of the fixed broadband access, literally just over or around half of the population has a wired network connection at home. Just half. And that means if you add everyone with mobile connections, no, not everybody in Cleveland actually has smart digital smartphones. Only about another 10% to that. So in total, we have about 38% of our population with no connectivity at all. And I want to briefly sort of share with you in very practical terms how we've tried to essentially overcome what Dave Talbot in the MIT Technology Review just about 5 months ago when he came to Cleveland, wrote up really the unacceptable persistence of the digital divide because it is rate limiting to anything that we might aspire to here in Cleveland or in many other cities around the country. For us, this is very much a cycle of exclusion. Fundamentally, this is a cycle that we are desperate to break out of. There is obviously a lack of information and computer technology skills, which in fact obviously generates low, typically service-related job opportunities, which in turn makes it very difficult to participate in the digital economy and on and on. So that's what Digital C, at least in part, is focused in on trying to break. And what we've done together, and I really wanted to share this with this listenership in particular, viewership, is really we have developed the nation's first dedicated high-speed network serving the underserved. Rather than assuming that the commodity network providers will do a job if all we do is create incentives, we've actually designed and built a network that supports the underserved populations in our community. We're very much focused in on access to the internet, providing devices and digital literacy. This is not the old, if you build it, they will come. This is very much an integrative strategy that we've been working on, and we're working very much in the basically downtown city core for those of you who have not been to the city recently, and we're working with our public housing authority as essentially the core partner in the activity. And again, just for those of you who are interested in some of the pieces and the parts, this is not Digital C doing a whole lot more than doing a strategic design engagement program, a program of engagement with community partners to actually build out the solution, fiber, antennas, integration, connectivity, devices, and training. Those are the elements in the program that we've unpacked here in Cleveland. And this is kind of the snapshot version of the film reel. This is a view from on top of basically the tallest building in our network. We have actually used millimeter wave, which provides us with gigabit fiber extension capabilities. These are strapped in on 9 buildings in the downtown core to these underserved community areas. Fiber optic actually drops down into the actual demarc of the, basically telecommunications room of these public housing units or men's homeless shelters or schools that are all part of the program. We do an alignment, a very careful alignment of the antennas so that they actually are talking to each other, and then we tether them back to Digital C's fiber optic network at one of our community anchor institutions, which in this case is actually the St. Vincent's Charity Hospital, which is tied in fiber optically to our backbone. And these other 8 buildings actually are using the antenna to tie back to the hospital system. And then within the building, we are literally taking the existing infrastructure, the old, if you will, crappy copper infrastructure, and we are providing a super turbocharged connectivity to each household in the environment. We are also providing and working with recyclers here in Cleveland to make sure that every household actually has a computer and wireless devices, and through a software kit, a set of software, Microsoft Office Productivity and the like. When we actually went ahead and tested this in our pilot group, we showed our first group of folks how to actually get on the internet, and then invited them to go to speedtest.net and asked them to press return. And when they got the returns, which you can see here, basically 800 megabits down and up symmetrical, the first question we got back is that fast? And again, I think you'll appreciate, at least certainly here in Cleveland, we appreciate that that is really fast, again, to the underserved parts of our community. And again, then working with our community partners to deliver basic digital literacy training to the community. Again, a program that involves work that was conducted by a nonprofit organization here called Connect Your Community with community delivery partners to develop digital literacy skills. And once people have completed that certificate, they actually get their computer and connectivity in the apartment. But that's really not enough. Again, we are targeting 4 specific at-risk parts of the community. And so with that foundation of infrastructure and training, we're now focusing in on youth that have timed out of foster care and the foster system, returning vets, single heads of households, basically SNAP moms, and men and women who are coming back into the community from the prison system around. And in Cleveland, that's about 1,500 people every year re-entering. In fact, interestingly enough, of the people living in the men's homeless shelter, which is on the network, about 60% of those are actually people who are re-entered from prison. Another 20% are actually homeless vets. A real challenge, obviously, in our legacy city as in any other legacy city. And then here, too, we have a series of delivery partners that we work with to actually deliver a series of curriculum that are really about a skills training intervention program. We're not trying to supplant other kinds of trainings that are going on in the community. We're very much focusing in on a handful of what the market has determined to be the most important short-term classes that can be offered by our delivery partners. So certainly that is kind of the, again, core intervention that has to do with making sure that the digital economy, to which many, many, many of us on this webinar have already joined, is actually available and accessible to everyone. That is the challenge of the legacy city, and I dare say it's the challenge for all of our urban America. I want to shift gears now to look at the city briefly from the water back to the city itself. And want to share with you 2 projects that Digital C is involved with, but really are being led by others in our community, because for the longest time, our lake has been a resource that many of us in Northeast Ohio have somehow managed to ignore. I arrived in Cleveland 15 years ago from the west coast of California, and I was in awe that we actually had a lake that, at least to my eye, looked as large as the ocean that I'd lived on for so many years. And really, I didn't see it so much as only an aesthetic issue. I also saw it as really a potential catalyst for innovation. But really, only in the last 5 years or so has there been an approaching inflection point where there really now is a coalition built around innovation on the water here at Lake Erie. It's led by our colleagues and friends at Cleveland Water Alliance, who have really been leading this activity. An effort to really focus in on not only innovation, but building innovation activities that can be commercialized, that can be invented, and actually have impact directly for our lake as well as all the freshwater lakes around the world. We're focusing in particularly on core strengths. All legacy cities have legacy assets, in our case, a deep experience with sensors, sorbents, a lot of new work being done in corrosion protection and new digital instrumentation, although we've been doing controls and automation in this region for a very, very long time. But this is really the effort to actually bring everyone together under the umbrella. It's not an accelerator or incubator project. It's really an effort, because there are literally hundreds and hundreds of firms engaged here, really an effort to choreograph and orchestrate that activity. And really the orchestration happens along kind of 4 different elements. These are largely just an effort to understand that working towards an intelligent water system ecosystem is really about an economic development model, and very much an effort here to focus in on the infrastructure that's required, a coalition that includes the sewer districts and the ports, and the metro parks, the cluster of leading researchers in our universities and other research settings, our industry partners, and a lot of ecosystem collaborators, which of course we're proud to say includes Digital C here as well. And just to kind of outline that one of the things that we've been doing together is really to hack the lake together, a program to outline a number, in this case 5 major problems identified by the 5 different communities in the region: Buffalo, Erie, Cleveland, Toledo, and Detroit, Windsor, working together. We are on the last lap after citywide and then quarter and semifinals to bringing together the finalists to Cleveland on May the 3rd to actually provide north of $50,000 worth of support just to actually kick off, to catalyze this innovation activity. And then at Digital C, what we're proposing doing, and we will be announcing on May the 3rd, is actually a second round of activities, which we call the Intelligent Water Systems Reverse Pitch Competition. And the reason that I indicate here that it's not only Digital C and the Cleveland Water Alliance, it's also a National Science Foundation program called US Ignite, which is there to develop next generation applications and services on networked environments, but also to acknowledge that we will be announcing the winners of our competition on October the 23rd when the world comes to Cleveland for Meeting of the Minds, to indicate that really this is an effort, a collective effort by many, many organizations in Northeast Ohio and across the Great Lakes to really focus in on the value of our water for the region's future. There is another important activity that I just want to very briefly mention here, which is an effort to harness the power of the lake. LEEDCO, which is the Lake Erie Energy Development Corporation, has now a program underway to put the very first phase, 6 wind turbines, in the lake about 6 to 10 miles offshore, northwest of our downtown area. It's developed with a Norwegian renewable company called Fred Olsen. The goal long-term is actually to develop a 5,000 megawatt, roughly the amount of energy being produced by 5 large nuclear reactors to generate power on the lake. The goal is ultimately to go from 6 to 1,000 wind turbines, and not just to produce power for Cleveland, but really to produce a manufacturing, construction, and innovation industry for Northeast Ohio. With the about 5 or so minutes left, I just want to add now to what I think what Cleveland is most well known for, which is around our healthcare environment. While folks on the webinar may well know about the Cleveland Clinic and may well know about the University Hospitals, 2 very important partners for Digital C and driving innovation across the region, I want to speak to and introduce you to Metro Health, under the leadership of its current president and CEO, Dr. Boutros, a really, I would say, very well-aligned effort to intentional innovation that is focused in very much at a community wellness vision. And what is really just announced sort of formally in terms of having financial support undergirded by our county, really Dr. Boutros' vision and supported by his board and by the community at Metro Health, a $1.3 billion community wellness vision, not just to reinvent the infrastructure of Metro Health, which is in many ways more than a century old in terms of its bricks and mortar, but really an effort by Metro Health to define what does it mean to be focusing in on wellness rather than just the intervention when someone walks into the ER or needs to have a procedure done. Again, in some ways, an inside-out model. What can we do to actually take what is our community's public healthcare provider, Metro Health, and actually make it relevant to the community around it? And it really kind of evolves around a handful of critically important insights that has come through strategic planning. The first is actually access to the hospital. Cleveland has, through the Department of Transportation, a very well-known artery from downtown to the University Hospital and Cleveland Clinic area through the health line, and announced as part of this activity will be to actually have an orthogonal artery that will take people from downtown to the west side of town, to down West 25th, to the extension of our health line in that environment. Related to it as well is an effort to be rethinking the role of housing and the effort not only to create smart, connected health housing, but really the role of a hospital in actually participating and leading in attending to the scientific discovery of and hopefully the remediation of legacy city challenges like lead, which we have unfortunately in very large and having significant healthcare implications. Likewise, very much an effort to focus in on the social support for healthcare literacy, an intervention strategy which again has a lot of smart and connected opportunities, but an effort that is very much focused in on the population that takes advantage of the Metro Health facilities. And really then, as Dr. Boutros has outlined, the last two elements to add is really a focus in on the transformation of the devolution over time of our urban core, where there are now food deserts, into the redevelopment of urban farms with direct support of the public health care provider, not simply something that they will champion, but that they will actually invest in. And likewise, an effort, as I said at the beginning of this particular piece in my webinar today, not just to invite people to come to the new, shiny Metro Health campus, but to really look to actually storefront and consumerization of the Metro Health offering into the community. Smart community healthcare housing projects where satellite facilities are set up for actually healthy homes. Obviously, some opportunity to put them also in commercial operations, as we've seen elsewhere, but really to do this as part of the brand of what Metro Health believes in terms of its smart and connected community health program. And of course, like any efforts to describe a innovation agenda in 26 minutes, it's hard to cover everything. I obviously have not even touched the surface of it. We very much hope that you will be interested enough to consider coming to join us and Meeting of the Minds here in Cleveland to learn about other innovation activities that are going on, from the amazing innovation that goes on in our Internet of Things project at the Cleveland Museum of Art, with the world's largest collection of interactive digital art and wayfinding in the museum experience, to the renaissance of downtown, which I opened, but really in our playhouse square environment, to the important expressions of public art, which have really begun to transform the landscape of our community. And with that, I will pass it back to Jessie.
Thank you so much, Lev. Fantastic stuff. Great. We're going to move into our Q&A now. So if our audience, if you have questions, please enter them and type them into the questions panel in your control panel on the right of your screen. I already have a ton of questions for you, Lev, but I just want to quickly, before we go into questions, say that a lot of what Lev has shared will be the focus of our workshop tours on October 24th at our annual summit. Digital C has been an amazing partner on co-developing with us the program and agenda for our annual summit in the fall. So we will be taking you guys as delegates out to see the health line, the BRT system, see urban farms and food systems at work, see what's happening around the lake with Erie Hack, as well as there's a workshop tour being led by Lev's colleague, Liz at Digital C, around the first third of Lev's presentation, which is Connecting the Unconnected. So if you join us in Cleveland, you'll get to actually get out into the neighborhoods and see all this stuff at play and at work with your own eyes. So I encourage you guys to join us. So quickly, Lev, I have my own question. If you can go back to the Erie Hack slide, can you talk a little bit more about the partnership between all of those 6 cities around the lake? Because that seems pretty unique. It's pretty a unique, framework to, and I'm wondering how you guys were able to get all of those cities on board to think about this. And seems like this might be the first time that so many cities around the lake have worked together to think about the strategies for cleaning up the lake. But can you touch on that?
Sure. And again, all of this has happened under the leadership of Brian Stubbs and Dorothy Bonnick from the Cleveland Water Alliance, and it is, to the best of their and my knowledge, the very first effort across national boundaries, but even in a multi-city way, to bring together communities around the lake in 3 different states to work together in a methodology which, again, was the first of its kind. And again, we learned together what worked and perhaps what didn't work as well as we had hoped. But overall, an amazing gathering with literally thousands of participants in a series of city-based community hackathon weekends that then led to city-based quarterfinals, semifinals on the regional level, which happened in Detroit just about 10 days ago. And as I say, everyone will be coming to Cleveland on May 3rd for the finale. And the effort here was really to test the proposition that there were, in fact, common problems that, in fact, cities and the not only scientific community, but the citizen scientists, entrepreneurs, hackers, developers, the usual entrepreneurs, the folks engaged in the institutional fabric of caring for the lake, like the sewer system, like the federal agencies that are involved, like the port, and even, importantly, NASA, which played an important role in doing the actual engagements in each of the cities to actually do the ideation activities that took place, and really an effort to bring together, I think, a really dynamic set of very practically focused. The 5 problem statements that the communities worked on were generated out of hundreds. They're very much focused in on the collective challenges that face water quality. Our follow-on activity that I referred to is really going to be focusing in on the intelligent water systems, because if you are reading online or in the traditional media or in any scientific journals, you'll know that nitrogen, effluent, and phosphorus runoff are creating huge environmental impacts to all the Great Lakes, but none more than Lake Erie because it is so shallow, and creating algae blooms. And what we will be working on in partnership with CWA is actually to figure out how to create a secure, network-based sensor monitoring and quick response environment in the second competition, which kicks off May 3rd and concludes October 23rd.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much for that elaboration on that. It's really exciting. And Brian Stubbs, who Lev just mentioned, will be leading a workshop tour to the Cleveland Water Alliance as well as the Northeast Ohio Sewer District together. So that's a big opportunity for get into the weeds with them for the workshop tour. So Lev, a couple more questions. Todd Herberg's wondering, hi Lev, what are some lessons learned that could be applied to medium and smaller sized legacy cities such as Akron and Canton just down the road from Cleveland?
Right, and again, having been in this sort of space working with legacy cities for as long as I have, I want to make sure that, again, I think folks will appreciate, here is the relief of legacy cities, and more of them are medium and small than are large. Certainly important, and typically, as we know, in terms of regional urban economic development, they typically sprouted out, the smaller cities and medium cities around these industrial cores cities. And in our experience, we want to be very careful to suggest that while there are very important lessons to be learned in medium and small cities from some of the experience that has been developed not only here in Cleveland, but also, for example, in Pittsburgh, and which we work with quite carefully, and obviously in Detroit, which is undergoing its own renaissance, Milwaukee, which already asserts itself to being one of the capitals for water innovation and so forth. while there is a lot of things to be learned around essentially community organizing, we are a big believer that one of the common elements is the idea of pitching the big tent. I think in small communities as well as larger communities, there are a number of innovators who are soloists or who work in fairly small organizational capacity, and we have invited all of them under the tent. We also have worked very carefully to make sure that ours is a partnership-driven activity. Once they're under the tent, it's not simply that they're there, but to actually develop intentional intertwining of relationships within the organizations that find themselves under the tent, attending to the major, essentially community-articulated priorities that exist. And finally, being very mindful that governance is critically important, rather than simply saying it's a loosely federated collection of people with mutual interests. We think also a lesson to be learned here is that there needs to be a governance model that is authentic and relevant to the community within which communities are based on their history and their leadership quotient, but to be mindful that it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be intergenerational, and it needs to be more open than at least most of our legacy cities have devolved to over the many decades.
Great. We have a question about your digital training program. Have you guys partnered with existing vocational or job training programs or employers? Like, how have you guys partnered with those kinds of partners and built upon that or reinvented? Yeah.
Right. So that's been critically important to the effort. Thanks for the question. Again, Liz Forrester, who is the lead for us in both the Connect the Unconnected as well as the Restart program, has done a masterful job in following what I just shared in terms of a bit of our kind of secret sauce. She has helped to pitch a very big tent. We have over 30 community referral and provider networks who are engaged in, and again, I would say an intertwining. It's not like in Cleveland or any other legacy city that there aren't important organizations that have been trying for many years to lead the development of digital skills, especially for at-risk parts of our community. But what we've offered to do, and which is showing great promise, is essentially the partnerships between the organizations to do the kind of mixing and matching that oftentimes is difficult when you are single-threaded. A library is a provider of services for a skills development organization because there's a state contract to do it, and that becomes the modus operandi of the relationship. By bringing folks under the tent, by Liz being successful in securing philanthropic funding, in this case from the Cleveland Foundation, who will also be part of the Meeting of the Minds gathering here in terms of the role of philanthropy in addressing digital skills development and other activities. I think that it's important for us to take advantage of all of the legacy assets, including those assets that are involved in digital skills development, our community colleges, our agencies, and as you can see here, our Head Start program, which is our Council for Equal Opportunity, is engaged towards employment, is one of the major and most important of our existing organizations, and their leadership has been critically important to our success there, as well as understanding what the market is demanding. And so we've been working with classrooms to corporations to understand, as again may not come as a huge surprise to people on the webinar, but the number one demanded entry-level digital skill set is Excel. And while we will have lots of other digital skills for the program, we are very much focused in on what the market is demanding for digital entry level. And I just want to very briefly point to, before we go to the next question, to point out this article again from Dave Talbot, which I encourage you to take a look at. It's available online at the MIT Technology Review. Dave tells the story of a young woman who actually came through the training program supported by the Ashbury Senior Community Center and Connect Your Community, came through it, had an aptitude for engagement, and actually found herself through intervention work of this coalition that we have built to actually work with the Cleveland Clinic Human Resource Office, and got herself into doing electronic medical records. She went from a $10 job to a $25 job. She actually was able, after having lost her home, actually to buy another home in Cleveland. And again, all that story is shared in Dave Talbot's December 2016. And I really want to say that, the story of the young woman is not unique. Today, entry-level jobs in a healthcare economy like Cleveland is the new middle class, the new road to the middle class. These are $45,000 to $60,000 a year jobs. They're very doable. There's lots of good track record for us to work on, and now this coalition that Liz has choreographed and orchestrated is now focused in on making more of those happen.
Fantastic, great. And the workshop tour that Liz will be leading will actually meet with many of the participants in that program and hear their stories and talk to them about their experience. So that's going to be amazing. So a couple questions from folks. People are wondering if slides will be available in the recording. Yes, the slides and the recording of the webinar will be available on our website on the event page, so you can see it after the fact. There's a lot of questions, Lev, about how Cleveland has learned or partnered with other legacy cities like Columbus, Detroit, and other places, or Chicago. Are you aware of other initiatives in those cities? And was there a learning network of legacy cities that you guys have been part of, or are there specific lessons learned from Detroit's experience around the digital economy that you guys have brought to bear on Cleveland?
Yes, and to acknowledge, and we've actually written a piece in one of our blogs. If folks are interested at digitalc.org, if you want to take a look /blogs, or just navigate from the web page. There really is a history around learnings in legacy cities. The actual term actually developed in Europe, in Germany, in an atlas program, a program of actually essentially mapping legacy cities. It was then brought into the U.S. And led, at least in no small measure, by the College of Urban Studies at Cleveland State University, which convened over a number of years leaders from the legacy cities, and with funding from a number of important national foundations that were interested in the challenge of planning the journey from legacy to digital. Much of that work was driven by those in the urban studies community. Our work represents, to the best of our knowledge, the first effort to intersect the learnings from the urban studies world with those engaged in the digital economic development world. And we have actually begun, for example, in the three areas that I've outlined today: broadband infrastructure, community healthcare, and workforce-related efforts, begun to map in our big data repository, which we call our Civic Insights Hub, which is available, I'm sorry for doing these commercials, but civicinsights.org. We've actually started to gather data on all the legacy cities at the intersection of the traditional information gathered by our colleagues in urban affairs and urban redevelopment to all of the digital skills and digital infrastructure elements. And our organization, Digital C, although based in Cleveland, aspires to be engaged with and supporting the development of architectures that are relevant to legacy cities, in particular, that are focused in on developing their own new civic agendas, working with their own communities' highest priorities, and then a particular piece of this, which again we draw inspiration from Dr. Boutros and the people at Metro Health, is to really focus in on place-based innovation in our community, and Digital C is involved directly in trying to provide economic planning support for community innovation. Again, very much community innovation. We call them hives, focus in on authentic and very diverse community participants.
Great. I'm learning so much, Lev, that I didn't know. This is fantastic. Can you repeat, Marcia Kadenoff is wondering if you can repeat the name of the MIT article.
Sure. It's in the December issue of MIT Technology Review. Here it is again up on the screen. Dave Talbot is the author, a longtime senior contributing editor. There's also a very nice piece by the editor of MIT Review in the same December issue, which really sort of speaks to the challenge of persistent digital divide. Again, a lot of the work that I do across the country is really to talk about how to create infrastructure that doesn't simply try to piggyback on top of existing traditional providers of broadband, but to take advantage of all of the important investments that happened during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act to identify literally hundreds of thousands of community anchor institutions and now extend high-speed broadband connectivity like we've done here, run and organized right by the community for the community, and certainly can be scaled by the incumbent providers. But this is really, we think, an important activity that, if focused, can intentionally bring, in the case of cities like Cleveland and Detroit, a full third of the human capabilities that are now in a nascent or kinetic state of being, not yet activated to participate in the digital economy, into the digital economy to drive participation, hopefully a pathway to creating new middle class opportunities to inspire children. One of the great programs, which unfortunately, as Jesse knows, we weren't able to fit everything into the program, but here in Northeast Ohio, there's so much innovation activity going on in so many sectors. I just came back last night from a program pitching, taking one of our great legacy maker projects, which is the Akron-based Soapbox Derby, which has been around since 1934, and actually work on developing a national competition in the 100-plus cities across America where the Soapbox Derby has a presence, into creating the first set of autonomous vehicle construction projects for young girls and boys, basically grades 5 through 7, integrate them into their curriculum. These are ways of taking advantage of these networks that serve the community in important ways to model the futures, to inspire children to be participating in it in a way that only children who have this playful DNA that we adults oftentimes lose. If we can set them out on their journey of discovery, we're very, very bullish that there is a great future for legacy cities like Cleveland and Akron.
Fantastic stuff. Love this. Okay, great. And we have a lot of questions, Lev, about the transportation system in Cleveland. And I know the CEO of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, Joe Calabrese, will be leading a workshop tour to explore the health line and rail connections and all of the great stuff happening. But Yolanda Gallegos asks, and this kind of pulls together a bunch of the transportation questions coming in. In your opinion, what has been the impact of the recent opening of Public Square as well as Healthline buses on the overall transformation of Cleveland, including tourism, pedestrian safety, environment of the city, et cetera? Can you just touch on maybe Public Square and Healthline and where the transportation system is headed and how it's enabled some of what you've talked about today?
Yeah. Again, I am going to do true confessions in front of 100 webinar participants here. I was actually fairly skeptical that, not knowing the domain of the catalytic impact of big transportation projects, I was fairly skeptical that the Healthline project would have the economic juice that it has proven to have over the last decade. And so I know in Detroit, which has engaged Kansas City, a number of other cities that we are involved with have asked the same question. And I have to say, the renaissance of the downtown, the now emergent renaissance of what we call Midtown, which again will be part of the experience here for those who come to Cleveland, and certainly what has gone on at University Circle has been made in large measure due to the $350 million or so that came in through the Department of Transportation grant for the Health Line. Should also mention that there's a huge state-funded project called the Opportunity Corridor, which again I think holds out the promise for similar work in the largest brownfield left in the state of Ohio, an effort to completely reinvent that activity. Public Square, which is really a fantastic anchor point in the city at the base of our transportation infrastructure for the entire region that all comes together at a public square, a stone's throw away from our water, and even historically when we had earlier efforts at helium balloon transportation, it was even launched from public square as well. So interesting history there. Public Square Renaissance has been about a $20 or so million effort that is catalyzed and significant effort in terms of time frame to coincide with the RNC coming to Cleveland, another part of community pride here to be sure, because it became our Hyde Park. People actually were able to use it for a very peaceful protest within a stone's throw of the RNC meeting. But subsequently, it's been programmed in very, very creative way by Land Studio in partnership with the Cleveland Museum of Art and a whole coalition of folks. It has a lovely little restaurant on site. It's programmed heavily through the week, and we just had our March for Science launched from Playhouse Square. So it's regained a role as essentially the portal to the life of the community in exciting ways. And again, it's a walk into our East 4th restaurant, a walking promenade. So again, I think they've done the effort is really very new, less than a year old. Lots of learning. One of the challenges that again people will probably be able to see is the challenges related to transportation through Public Square. A bit of a thorn in the side of the city and the Transit Authority, which is getting worked on, but speaks to a good problem to have, which is, we have increased ridership and interest in Public Square, two good things to have as problems around which to choreograph how to optimize the customer and citizen experience.
Great. And Healthline won the best BRT system in North America from ITDP, is that right? I think that's who. That's
true. And Joe and Pete have done a great job along with really a terrific board of specialists. Again, I don't know, Jesse, all of the final sort of workshops that are being held here, but the coalition around inventive public transportation includes Mayor Jackson and City Hall, includes NOACA, which is our regional planning authority, and in significant measure, the Greater Cleveland Regional Transportation Authority.
Fantastic. Great. I'm going to shift gears slightly to talking about vacancy, housing, and vacant properties for a second. Keith O'Connor's asking, what kind of initiatives and projects have you seen that have been successful or have the prospect of being successful in responding to the challenges and opportunities inherent in the extremely high vacancy rates that you noted as one of the factors that unites so many of these legacy cities? How are these vacant properties and abandoned buildings being put back into productive use? And Lev, I'll just make a really quick plug to maybe touch on the land bank a little bit in your answer.
Oh, yes. No, of course. Yeah, Digital C has actually done some work both for the county, who's a major sponsor of our work and an enthusiastic sponsor of a Meeting of the Minds, in the efforts related to this very question around vacant properties. It is the land bank that is developed here in Cleveland that really spawned the work of Jim Rokakis, spawned work not only across the state of Ohio, bringing hundreds of millions of federal dollars into play for basic planning around work to assemble plots of land. I mentioned the Opportunity Corridor is one example of efforts by the land bank. Perhaps the most important one that participants who come to Cleveland will be able to see is actually in the Midtown Corridor, Just to reflect back, Jesse, on the earlier question about the importance of the transportation investment, when downtown Cleveland was at its lowest ebb, there were literally, I believe the number is close to 100 different property owners. And it was extremely difficult to do any planning, never mind master planning, in that environment. And if you take a look at some of the brownfield infrastructure that we have in the Midtown, which sits between downtown and the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and Case Western Reserve, Museum of Art, and so forth at University Circle, right in the middle is about 3 miles of really, really difficult land assembly, which the land banks of Cleveland and the county land bank managed to assemble. And in relatively rapid order, under the leadership of Jeff Epstein and a number of folks who, developers, have actually transformed. I'll just offer 3 very interesting projects in these former brownfields that would not have been possible if it was simply fragmented, vacant property, abandoned property, condemned properties, and like, all of which there are literally thousands in plots in our city, as well as many others that you see on the slide that you have here. One is that the University Hospitals will be opening up a new children's Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. It's right in the city core. It's a fantastic new investment which brings healthcare in the same spirit as Dr. Boutros in the Metro Health directly to the community to support the needs of the community. Secondly, a very large technology company has just recently announced moving 400 jobs into the Midtown. It's called Dealer Tire. Yes, they distribute tires, which aren't very high-tech in some ways. In other ways, they're extremely high-tech, but it's not tires that they manufacture. It's a national distribution chain, one of the largest in the world, is actually moving to the Midtown area. Our entrepreneurial ecosystem is housed in the Midtown area, led by Jumpstart, which is our aggregator of such entrepreneurial activities by Ray Leach and his colleagues. And then finally, Digital C, our own organization, hopes to be moving into the Midtown, all of which would have been impossible to imagine as a master plan. We call it the Health Tech Corridor. And there would have been no Health Tech Corridor had we not had some, I would say, Renaissance thinking and forward thinking as it relates to the assembly of vacant property.
Amazing. Okay, fantastic. Lev, we've run out of time, but this was an amazing deep dive and overview of what's happening in Cleveland, and obviously the reason why we've chosen Cleveland for our annual summit in the fall. So there's a lot going on that we can all learn from. So with that, we're going to wrap it up, but a short survey will pop up once you all close your browser, and we really appreciate your feedback. We hope to see you at next month's webinar on our blog, and of course, as mentioned many, many times, our annual summit in Cleveland in October. All of our information is available at our new website, meetingoftheminds.org. So, Lev, thank you so much, and that concludes our session for today. Lev, thank you again.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks.